This is Common Threads. We do this here live from Brooklyn, New York every Thursday night, right at 8 o'clock, maybe 8 o'clock in a couple seconds. We do this live streaming on Twitch, YouTube, Rumble, and X. One liberal, one conservative, 1 hour-ish. Maybe we're kind of flexible with the time. We do this. The team is Taylor, Alexi, Chris, Dan, Danielle, and myself. A show like no other. A show where you sound off. There in the bottom right of the screen, you'll see a QR code. You, yes, you, well, you and lots of other people can chime in about what you want to see. Our debate guests, don't worry, we'll introduce them in just a second. What do you want to see them talk about for the third and final topic of the show? As you can see there, we threw away all the original ideas we had because, you know, the mayor of New York City got indicted last night. That had to be one of the choices. We also had the vice president sit down for her first official solo network interview. I don't think it went great, but we'll see what the guests have to say if you choose that. And most importantly, throughout the show, sound off in the comments, ask your questions. We will be featuring your comments. I will be interrupting the guests repeatedly to get them to respond to you directly. And of course, we're very grateful you're taking the time to watch. Without further ado, let's bring in our two very special guests of the night. Justin Robert Young is a national political reporter. He is host of the Politics podcasts. There he is, right there. He's also the writer at freepoliticalnewsletter.com and an old pal of mine. Also joining the show this evening is Matt Keelen. Matt is a GOP strategist, managing principal over at the Vogel Group. And Matt, is this true? You're voted a top 50 DC lobbyist by The Hill. You're actually on that annual list The Hill puts out for lobbyists.
I've been on there a few times. It's not a high bar to
Been on there a few times. Been on there a few times. I love it. Very thrilled to have both of you guys taking the time to join us. Let's dig right in with our first topic of the night. It sounds wonky, but I want everyone to stick through because it's really important. We are starting, of course, with the thing everyone in national news media is talking about, the filibuster. In the great United States Senate, we say it always takes 60 votes to get something done, and it's worth noting on a note of technicality that's not technically true. It does take 60 votes to end a Senate debate, in other words, invoke cloture. But we do have a 60-vote threshold in the United States Senate, and I think we should. The United States Senate is the cooling saucer of Congress. It's where cooler heads go to prevail. It's where, dare I say, compromise is not always a dirty word. However, Vice President Kamala Harris, Democratic nominee, she made clear a few days ago she would eliminate the 60-vote threshold for one particular issue. Take a listen.
51 votes would be what we need to actually put back in law the protections for reproductive freedom and for the ability of every person and every woman to make decisions about their own body and not have their government tell them what to do.
A quick, too long didn't read history of the filibuster. Back in 2013, it was Democrat Harry Reid, of course, famously first chipped away at the 60-vote threshold for some judicial nominees. Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader, not to be outdone in 2017, said, well, you already did it for some nominees. Let's just do it for Supreme Court nominees as well. And that brings us to this admission by Kamala Harris. Not the first time the vice president has said this. Not everyone is thrilled. Retiring Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia had this to say. For whatever it's worth, for all the diehard Joe Manchin fans out there, he said, shame on Harris. She knows the filibuster is the holy grail of democracy. That's how you know we're talking about like real nerdy Senate stuff when you're talking about the holy grail of the republic. He goes on to say it's the only thing that keeps us talking and working together. If Harris gets rid of that, this would be the House on steroids. Justin, I'd hate to imagine what the House of Representatives on steroid actually looks like, but talk to me about this promise specifically for reproductive rights. Is this realistic? Is this a talking point from Harris? How do you see this playing out?
I mean, if we saw the House on steroids, based on how Marjorie Taylor Greene works out, she might have biceps like Roman Reigns. We'll find out. You know, I think you pointed out that there is a escalation here, and this is just the natural order of where the Democratic Party is headed. It is worth noting that Kamala Harris previously said that she is for abolishing the filibuster, not only for codifying Roe, but also the Green New Deal and the Voting Rights Act that the Democrats had floating there before. Now, to be fair, you have to kind of double check exactly where Kamala Harris is now compared to things that she has said in the past, because she has moderated many of her stances, I will say kindly. But there's no doubt that this is a knock at the door that will continually be there. And whether or not it's the filibuster, it's going to be packing the Supreme Court or adding states, because that is what Democratic voters want. And if that's what they want, then that's what their elected representatives will seek.
Matt, I saw you agreeing with Justin, which I love. That's what we're here to do, fellas. Let's find this common ground here. Is this the sort of thing that can come back to hurt Democrats, haunt Democrats later, the way I would argue it kind of happened with Neil Gorsuch? We sat there in 2017. McConnell's like, aha, well, remember Reid, remember what he did. I'm going to take it a step further.
Well, JD, you know what they say about karma. It is a real, you know what, and it has come back every time the Democrats have changed precedent, particularly in the U.S. Senate. It has come back to bite them. You know, I loved it in the Senate debates when McConnell went to move forward on the Supreme Court justices under the rules that Harry Reid had broken. Guys like Dick Durbin came down to the Senate floor literally with tears in his eyes, begging the Republicans, please don't make the same mistake that we made. Put the rules back in place. Don't do what we did. But this is the problem with Harris's proposal. Look, it's not going to be for one thing. Once this Pandora's box is open, it's open forever. And one of the problems that Democrats have on this, I believe, it's far more likely in 2025 that there is a united Republican DC, meaning House of Representatives, Senate. Right now it's sitting at 51-49. John Tester is bye-bye up in Montana. So, and Trump gets elected. So will it be okay? Will Harris then support changing the filibuster if it's Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell making the rules? Absolutely not. In 2017, Harris, along with a bunch of other Democrat senators, came out and said, we shouldn't abolish the filibuster only because Donald Trump and the Republicans were in charge. Look, you got to be consistent on this stuff. And one of the reasons why I completely agree with Justin is she's been all over the map. We don't know which Kamala we're going to have today, and we don't know where she's going to be. I can guarantee you when she loses the election, she will be against busting the filibuster, along with every other Democrat senator who have already said they're going to do it. One of the geniuses of the founders was the United States Senate. It's the cooling saucer, right? Stuff comes over from the House. You're supposed to have debate, and we have seen that over the history of our country. And to take that away, we will cease being a republic and we will be a democracy. And that is not good for public policy.
Justin, does the average American care? We love the filibuster talk.
Oh, yeah.
And we love budget reconciliation. Just by the way, hold on to your butts, because we got a great explainer on budget reconciliation coming up about this. But this is really important. This stuff is really important, because when I get questions from loved ones asking me, like, the basics of parliamentary procedure and what passes through the House, and not to sound too schoolhouse rockish, but, like, how a bill becomes a law. Like, this is really important stuff, and I think it helps voters 40 days. We are 40 days from the presidential election as of tonight to understand the things that both candidates are saying through the lens of how they play by the rules of the game and how they want to change the rules of the game. But Justin, does the average American, please?
Sorry, we got a surprise for you.
We got a surprise. Okay, folks, I'm being told to hold on. What do we have?
There we go.
You sure gotta climb a lot of steps to get to this Capitol building here in Washington. Well, I wonder who that sad little scrap of paper is.
I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long wait while I'm sitting in committee. But I know I'll be a law someday. At least I hope and pray that I will. But today, I am still just a bill.
That is, first of all, that's the highlight of my broadcast.
Phenomenal.
On top at this point, I need to
t-shirt.
shout out Alexi, because I came into the studio today and Alexi's like, "Yo, I'm cooking here in the corner. JD, get out of the room. I'm running this surprise." So shout out to Alexi and the team for that. That's awesome. Justin, your thoughts either on that incredible work of art we just saw, or the broader conversation about the average American at home who does watch things like Schoolhouse Rock to understand how this all
and
works.
can be now educated by the voice of a songbird, J.D. Durkin, in that rendition of "I'm Just a Bill." To Matt's point, I know it's hard to go back to something that happened after that happened before that, but to Matt's point, look, Kamala Harris has absolutely been squishy on the issues. I don't think that anybody would make an argument that the woman that she was in 2019 is the woman that she is in 2024. That being said, the woman that she is right now is leading in the polling averages in enough swing states that would make her president of the United States. And you are hoping, as a Republican, that there will be a polling error for a third consecutive year in Donald Trump's favor when that is not guaranteed. With that being said, JD, do people care about the filibuster? No. Do people care about Roe versus Wade? Yes. And there's a reason why. Like, do they care about packing the Supreme Court? No. Do they hate the Supreme Court now because they believe that they took something away from them in Roe versus Wade? Yes. The solutions to get to where they need to be are inconsequential. Now, is that short-sighted? Should there be more high-minded leadership in DC? Maybe. But we don't live in that world right now. We live in the world of gimme, 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 now, now, now.
When I hear high-minded leadership, by the way,
yeah,
I think of Vice President Harris. Absolutely comes to mind. High-minded leadership.
Well, by the way, Matt, I mean, not to, I don't want to skip over the obvious. In your last response, you said when Harris loses. I assume here you've made a prediction, prediction and/or endorsement, but you seem confident here that Trump. What do you think? Runs the table here? Hits Wishikin?
I'm sure you guys saw the Gallup numbers that came out yesterday, and 9 out of 10 issues, Trump is ahead. This is going to be a change election. People are not happy with the direction of the country. Now, Vice President Harris can say, I'm not the incumbent. I'm the change candidate. I'm going to turn the page. The problem is she's the sitting vice president. And Joe Biden, God bless his heart, came out yesterday and said, she's with me and working on every issue, domestic policy, foreign policy. I love the man. You know, ever since he put the Trump hat on, he's actually spitting some truth. So the problem for Harris is on every issue, she's upside down. So that's why when she does an interview, she can't answer questions. I don't think she knows what position she has because she has been moving around so much, particularly from when she ran for president in 2019 to running for president as the, did she win the Democratic primary? No, she didn't get one vote in the Democratic primary. Oh, the bosses picked her in the smoke-filled room. They're saving democracy, sure. But whatever. The problem for her is she has no issues to run on except for one. She just mentioned it, and that's the only game she has. If this election comes down to abortion, she'll probably win. I don't think it will. It's going to come down to, are you better off? Are you safer here at home and internationally than you were 4 years ago? And the resounding sound of the American people is absolutely not. And that's her problem. So I do think the blue wall is going to crumble. I think Trump's populist policies are taking Democrats away from Kamala Harris. She's going to have trouble holding on to that blue wall. And if she loses one state in the blue wall, it's over.
Well, Matt, can I ask you something?
If you fall, hold on, hold on. I got a shout out because we did have a comment here from Michael Longman who popped in to go. He said the surge is real. I got to shout out the comments.
Sure, yeah. Of course.
That's what we're all about. Courtney say can't wait for say something nice tonight. Oh yeah, just you wait, Courtney. That's coming up soon here in just a little bit. And then we also had, I think Michael wrote in a comment a minute ago saying the surge is real. I gotta be honest. Sometimes I don't entirely know what the comments mean, but incredible work of art. Says Vanessa. I can imagine that is the surge of Trump. Jerry, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, Matt, let me ask you a question because I saw those Gallup numbers, and if you have not seen them, you really should look at them. Gallup says that this is not only the best environment for Republicans since 2004, the last time that they won the popular vote, but it's substantially better. It is like 3 points. They predicted, I think it was an R plus 3 or 4 environment next year. And if you're not aware of what that is who would win the popular vote. That's a sea change. We have not seen that in national politics in a very long time. Democrats have an advantage in that because New York and California and Illinois. But if that's the case, Matt, then I get it for Trump, and you're seeing numbers that are consistent with that. But why are all these other Senate candidates getting smoked in these polls in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, and in Nevada and Arizona? If this really was an R+3 environment, then why are we seeing such lagging numbers?
Well, typically Republicans come home later than Democrats, and that's one of the reasons why those Senate candidates are waiting to catch up to Trump in those states. But in Pennsylvania, McCormick, two polls in a row, tied with a guy who's been around for decades, if you include his dad being governor. Him being tied in under 50 right now is not a great place to be. Wisconsin's, I've seen polls having it at 2 points, 3 points. Again, guy's never run for office before. He's running against a two-term senator that's been around forever. Nevada, I'm not going to get in trouble for that.
Yeah.
I was going to call you out on it.
I corrected myself. I did get yelled at last week for that. Sam Brown, you're not going to find a more compelling person running for office in 2024 than Sam Brown. He's just being smoked financially, as all these candidates are. And then I'm predicting in Michigan, Trump wins Michigan, and Mike Rogers is going to be the next senator from Michigan. He is running a great campaign. She has had some.
That's a Slotkin race. Wait. That's Mike Rogers. Slotkin.
Yeah. Which is the.
We got two. We got a House Democrat against a House
non-incumbent.
Republican for the.
Yep, it's open.
All right, Matt, go ahead and finish up before we move on.
So I just think you have a really good point. Right now they're lagging, but if you look at where they are and where they're going, and where the Democrats have just stayed static, if they catch up to Trump in those states, which there's not a lot of, Trump Slotkin voters. There's not a lot of them out there. And I think you're going to see several of those. Ohio is another state. I mean, I would not want to be Sherrod Brown right now. Trump's going to win Ohio by at least 10 points.
A lot of people wouldn't, and Senator Sherrod Brown is heavily targeted by crypto groups. There's some really deep-pocketed kind of dark money things going on, and that is one of the races they're snarkling. I gotta call out this comment here. Snark aside, do we really think someone who first ran 9 years ago is a change candidate? That comes from Dealmo037. My first reaction is, to be fair, Joe Biden first ran for the presidency in 1987. Had to drop out. If I'm not mistaken, jury remind me, Biden had to drop out because of a plagiarism scandal that year.
Neil Kinnock. He ripped off Neil Kinnock.
There it is. And then ran, of course, again in 08.
What It Takes is an insane book. Everybody should read it.
Really good. Really good. So I appreciate that comment, and thanks for letting me get that in for the guests. Okay, we're going to move on to a similar topic here, but I promised, folks, because I know everyone's at home, they're on the edge of their seats like, JD, you promised me something on budget reconciliation, man. Let's get right into it. A quick history detour on the differences between this conversation, the 60-vote threshold, and a process known as budget reconciliation. This was created, crack the history books, folks, back in 1974. This bill was called the Congressional Budget and Impoundment Control Act. It created the nonpartisan CBO, or Congressional Budget Office, signed into law by President Richard Nixon in July of that year, 1974. The goal here for budget reconciliation is to better align spending, revenue, and the debt. It's been enacted for 50 years. In those 50 years, we've only used it 23 times. It's a sneaky, fast-track way for a party that's in power, kind of, to change the law. In power, 50-50 split, with a tie-breaking vote coming in from the vice president. Not a 60-plus majority, the way you had back in the FDR days. Not all laws can be used for budget reconciliation. You get kind of rare cracks at the bat. 3 specific reasons to use it: changes to debt, changes to revenue, changes to spending. Most legislation is subject to filibuster, but with budget reconciliation, there's no delay. There's no filibuster. In other words, you don't need 60. You need 50 plus 1. I call this a legislative hall pass. And if you look at the last 10 years of the United States Congress, I believe the 3 most divisive bills that Congress has passed have all passed under this wonky procedural mechanism called budget reconciliation. We'll remind our viewers of 2017. This was the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, also known as the Trump-era tax cuts. The Senate passed it 51-48. Senator John McCain was out due to health. It's how Democrats passed the American Rescue Plan a few years later, 2021, also known as the third tranche of Uncle Sam bucks, passed by Biden. It was a 50-49 vote in the Senate, Sinema Manchin voting in favor, Vice President Harris casting the tie-breaking vote. And then finally, what Democrats called the Inflation Reduction Act. I still think that's a really stupid fucking name. Respectfully, call it what it was. It's a generational green energy EV
there
bill.
We go.
And it's like Democrats kind of fucked up with that one because what it is, people would be more inclined to support it. But regardless, they passed it with budget reconciliation. Justin, over to you. Is the toothpaste out of the tube here on reconciliation? We're clearly here, and both parties are willing to
let's
use
also remember the greatest character in congressional politics that happens whenever a budget reconciliation bill gets talked about, and that is the parliamentarian who, gets the piece of paper to determine. They put on, I'm sure, their wizard robes and look into the eye of Palantir and decide exactly what is and is not relative to our budget, which of course almost everything is. I mean, that's one thing about Congress, is that everybody thinks that Congress can solve problems. Congress can't solve problems. Congress can write a check to somebody to solve a problem. That is how Congress solves all their problems, either giving money or taking away money from something that they hope to benefit. So everything at the end of the day comes down to cash. But yeah, I think the idea with budget reconciliation is that it should be something that is less controversial than, let's say, restoring Roe as a law. I don't think that we have necessarily hewed to that per se, and the Inflation Reduction Act, for whatever it needed to be called to make Joe Manchin vote for it, was whatever it was in terms of being controversial, which it absolutely was.
Matt, your thoughts here. I'm glad we could all agree, by the way, especially on the Inflation Reduction Act, because it's just one of those things where I'm like, I feel like if you're the Democrats, you had what you wanted. Yes, it's part messaging bill. Yes, you got it done this other way. You would have loved more more sweeping support, but it's because they passed it in 2022 when inflation was north of 9%. But Matt, yeah, your thoughts here on reconciliation, and I mean, how do you think Trump? Hey, listen, you're predicted a GOP sweep. Trump's going to use reconciliation again the way he did to overhaul.
Absolutely, and one of the things about reconciliation is not permanent. So the Trump tax cuts are not going to be around next year unless they pass something in 2025, which I think is going to be a big issue in this campaign. People did like those tax cuts where I would have done it differently, to be honest with you guys. I wouldn't have done the SALT deductions because I do think that killed the Republicans when it came to the 2018 House elections in particular. Because if you look at the states where they took their biggest beating, it was states that benefited from that SALT. Look, absolutely, there's going to be a reconciliation. No matter who wins in 2025, they're going to need that to pass their economic package. But one of the things is to take a real quick trip down memory lane. The only party that has had 60 votes in the Senate recently was the Democrats.
Yeah, Barack Obama.
Barack Obama. Did they pass immigration reform? No. Did they codify Roe? No. So I guess it wasn't that important to many of those same Democrats who are still in the Senate now. So when you
did they pass healthcare? Was that Obamacare?
That was Obamacare.
They had 60 votes to do it, and they didn't do it. Why?
Okay, but they did change the heck.
Absolutely.
I understand your point. But it's like, hey, we get this number. I mean, first of all, you're talking about 2008, 2009. They're like, we get this number of bites at the apple. What's our first biggest priority? I totally concede to that. But it's not as if you're sitting there and saying, oh, Obama had 60 willing Senate Democrats and got absolutely nothing done.
But
60.
How do you look at the immigration groups and tell them over and over again, oh, if you just give us power, we'll pass immigration reform? You had your chance. You had 60 votes, the only party that had it, and they didn't even bring it to the floor, nor did they bring a codification of Roe. So it wasn't a priority to Barack Obama or the Senate Democrats or the Nancy Pelosi. and the House Democrats. So when they tell you that it's such a big issue for them, they are lying. They had a chance in our lifetime to change it, and they didn't, because they want the issue to run on. They had 60 votes. By the way, the Republicans will never get the 60 votes in the Senate. It just won't happen. I wish it would.
I don't think either party, we may be in for like a decade plus. It may take a genuinely generational candidate again before we get a type of 08 wave. We're in jump ball territory. Like, this is it. This is why I do see the breakdown of the filibuster happening. It's why I think reconciliation is kind of the new way to get things done. There's love the tax cuts. Listen, there's also everyday people who love the Trump tax cuts. Like, there's lots of people who are not billionaires who are like, shit, I have.
And billionaires love a lot. It's pretty cool to be a billionaire. You can like buy a Bugatti and just. You can just run it off the pier if you want. So part of the reason why the reconciliation thing, I believe, is on the table right now, JD, is because Kamala Harris does need to freshen up that road take. What Matt says is not untrue. There is a tremendous amount of political utility and money that comes into Democratic causes by way of being the guardians and fighters of abortion. And I have been critical of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for essentially just running back the nearly verbatim the exact same playbook that they have for the last 10 years on Roe. To say Roe is on the ballot and I'm going to vote for Roe if I get a bill on my desk. That's ridiculous. I think that they really needed to be more aggressive on this. Kamala Harris should be on the ground in states where there are abortion referendums and actively campaigning on that. I think that is lost money that they have on the table right there to show that they are serious about this issue in 2024. And they're not just doing the same thing that they've done via muscle memory. That being said, I think that the reconciliation thing is the only minor tweak that they have done to essentially the same song out of the hymnal of Roe is on the ballot, Roe is on the ballot, Roe is on the ballot. Have I mentioned that Roe is on the ballot?
Unfortunately, we're not going to solve it tonight. I wish we could. I could continue this conversation, but we want to move on to our second topic, and it's this idea of economic populism. Because usually I feel like a general election is a bit of a race to the center. In some ways on the economy, it's kind of a race to the left, or maybe it's like Harris refashioning herself as more of a capitalist and Trump going with some things that I think even Bernie Sanders would sit there and be like, yeah, Donald, absolutely. In Nevada, here's a look at a quick few of the things that both candidates agree on. Trump was the first to call for no taxes on tips. It's clearly a play for the hospitality crowd of the great state of Nevada. Harris quickly called for the same, basically saying, yeah, what he said. I agree. Over in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, both Trump and Harris and Biden are against the deal between U.S. Steel and Nippon Steel out of Japan, aligning themselves with the U.S. Steel Workers Union. More than 1 million members, that union has endorsed Harris, but they don't agree on everything. Here's Donald Trump earlier this week.
I just noticed behind me John Deere tractors. I know a lot about John Deere. I love the company. But as you know, they've announced a few days ago that they're going to move a lot of their manufacturing business to Mexico. I'm just notifying John Deere right now. If you do that, we're putting a 200% tariff on everything that you want to sell into the United States.
I'm convinced he made the number 200 up off.
You think?
Like, he just as easily could have been like, we put an 800% tariff. I swear. And now it's 200. Matt, I want to open this up with you because in addition here, and here's the Bernie Sanders crossover. It's like Donald Trump saying he now wants to limit interest rate on credit cards to 10%. I can hear financial services. I could hear Wall Street. I could hear the credit card companies shrieking in the background that the Republican standard bearer would ever say something so objectively liberal as stop collecting interest rate charges, credit card companies. Matt, do you think Trump's leading the GOP in a bit of a new direction, or is this just kind of throw it out there rhetoric that we're not supposed to take too literally in his effort to secure support?
JD, the Trump Republican Party is so far away from the George W. Bush Republican Party. The Chamber of Commerce does not walk in lockstep with Donald Trump. I knew Trump was on to something in 2015 when he came out against the Asia free trade deal. And I would see crowds of union members and Tea Party members protesting together on an issue that they thought impacted both of them. And in that heartland where this election is going to be won and lost, those trade issues are a killer. Get JD's book out, watch JD's movie. You can see what the policy of the 90s, and I will tell you, Bill Clinton fundamentally changed the Democratic Party from the party of labor to the party of Wall Street, Silicon Valley, Hollywood. And that's where the Democratic Party is today. And it's one of the reasons why Donald Trump does so well when it comes to union households, not union leadership per se, but union households, because he's talking to people who are impacted by these horrible policies that hollowed out our manufacturing, particularly in those Rust Belt states. So this is a totally new Republican Party. Look at his numbers with minorities. Look at his numbers right now with young kids. They want to move out of their house. They want to get a job. They want to buy a house. And under the crushing policies of the last 4 years, they can't do it. So I will tell you, as a Republican, this guy has totally changed our party, and I think for the better. I'm somebody who didn't grow up on a country club. I grew up looking at the country club, someday hoping to get in, and that's the party of Donald Trump. And it's so funny to say that a billionaire from New York is the one that did this. But if you look at it, those two men fundamentally changed their parties. Bill Clinton changed the Democratic Party. In my personal opinion, I grew up a Democrat, Irish Catholic union family, and he's kind of took the Democratic Party away from me. And Donald Trump has moved more toward Main Street and away from Wall Street. And I think that's a good thing. People in America are tired of these companies that are putting profit over people. Used to be companies cared about the United States. Now,
but I think that's a big, and it's well taken. I think that's part of Harris's message. It's not just that. First of all, we got a great comment here. Harris wants to give $25,000 new homeowners. It's basically a Kickstarter. I don't really know
where's she getting money from,
but it's something she's talking about it that'll help people to go where they want to go. No, Justin, your thoughts either in response to what Matt had to say, but Matt actually brings up a good point, Justin. I'm interested in. There oftentimes, at least there seems to be the perception of a difference between union leadership and union membership.
Yeah.
And so it's one thing for the United Steelworkers in Pennsylvania or any of these other groups to say, oh, well, the union endorses. But one thing Trump at least talks about is like, well, listen, you talk to the members of the union themselves. Like, they're all Trump guys, right? What do you think?
The first night of the Republican National Convention, to give you an idea, the final two speakers of the night were Amber Rose and the head of the Teamsters. Like, that
Wait, those are our guests for next week's show, by the way. So I'm thrilled you mentioned up. We're gonna do a plug for
great plug.
If the party of George H.W. Bush were to see that headliner, they would evaporate like the dude who drank from the wrong grail in the third Indiana Jones movie. It is a fundamentally different party. The only person of the four people that are either nominated for president or vice president that's an unabashed fan of Lena Khan, one of the most activist FTC commissioners that we have ever seen, is J.D. Vance, who's the youngest of the three of them and by far the most successful product of a pretty dismal coaching tree that Donald Trump has put forth in terms of elected representatives, especially for the Senate. It's been pretty bad, except for J.D. This is Donald Trump's party. It is the dive bar, not the country club. It is identifying with less people. And if Matt is correct, and he indeed will be the 45th and 47th president of the United States of America, it's going to be because he already had that connection with the people. And then they went through 3 horrendous years of inflation that squeezed them so hard they will never forget it, and they're going to take it out on the party in power. That will be the reason why. That will be the narrative. Now, is that what's going to happen? We don't know. Polling would suggest otherwise right now. But the makeup of the party is something that I think is very scary for Republicans, because while Trump can activate that, and he might very well be the next president, you have not seen the ability for other candidates to do it per se. On a piecemeal basis, you got your Brian Kemps, you got your Glenn Youngkins, you've got guys that can really win that are fitting in with this party, and they're able to mesh specifically some of that bygone, never Trump, bulwark, dispatch kind of crowd and fold them in. But it's not a given. And anyone who tries to walk exactly the same that Trump does, You got a lot more Dr. Oz's and Herschel Walkers on that list than you do anybody that's actually brought voters home.
Man, remember those campaigns? Sometimes I think I've been covering politics too long, and then you mentioned something like that. I was like, those were the days when those dudes were running. We got a great viewer-submitted question, and I'm going to ask to briefly get your take on this. It's just one of the things that Vice President Harris is proposing, $50,000 for small business tax deduction. She repeated this last night in her MSNBC interview. The idea being, no one can start a small business with only $5,000. We're going to give $50K. Matt, I'm going to start things over to you. Obviously, this is a play for something that sounds good. A universe of questions about how this would work. Where does it come from? But Matt, first to you on the small business deduction, because this is something that it's going to pique the interest of a lot of voters.
Absolutely. And I would tell the vice president, if you wanted to be pro small business, maybe you would take away all the regulations and the taxation that you're putting on them already. You've been vice president for 3.5 years. You had control of Congress the first 2 years of your vice presidency. And this idea never popped in her head. It's obviously a ploy. She has no idea. If you ask her, how are you going to pay for it? She wants to tell you, hey, I grew up middle class in Canada. In America. And did I tell you I grew up middle class? Because there's no answer. Of course. Hey, I think we should give every small business $100,000 if they have a good idea. Yeah. I mean, what if I was selling T-shirts out of my business?
Let me cut you off real quick if I can, because I want to get Justin on here, so we got to get rolling. But Justin, you're because we got the question submitted from a viewer. Your thoughts here on the $50K?
We're into promise season, baby. That's just hold on to your butts, because we got a lot of promises from here until November.
Yeah. By the way, the vice president was asked a follow-up version of this last night. The question from Stephanie Ruhle is, how are you going to pay for this? If you can't get corporate tax rate risen, if the Republicans control the Senate, how do you pay for this? And she did not give the answer. It was not a good interview. I don't think the vice president, she may be a very skilled technician, relationships. I'm not saying she couldn't be president or be a politician, but man, it's just like those interview settings. I don't think. Yeah, do we have the clip? Yep. Okay, so I'm going to get both of you guys to react to this. This is the moment that most frustrated me last night. Here's Vice President Kamala Harris. Take a listen.
And expanding that child tax credit, or you mentioned housing before, giving that extra money for a first home. If you can't raise corporate taxes, or if GOP takes control of the Senate, where do you get the money to do that? Do you still go forward with those plans and borrow?
Well, but we're going to have to raise corporate taxes, and we're going to have to make sure that the biggest corporations and billionaires pay their fair share. That's just it. It's about paying their fair share. I am not mad at anyone for achieving success, but everyone should pay their fair share, and it is not right that the teachers and the firefighters that I meet every day across our country are paying a higher tax than the richest people in our country.
I mean, yes, correct. More on that later. But the frustrating part is that, and I get it, it's politically inconvenient when you're running for president. You don't want to have to admit that you may have to govern over a broken Pennsylvania Avenue. You don't want to have to admit you could be a Democratic president who's got a Republican-controlled Senate, and then you can't really do more than half the shit that you're promising people on the campaign trail. We run into this mistake every election cycle. I thought it was a fair question. I would have liked a far more substantive answer. We do have a comment here. I'm going to get this to both of you guys. How much political momentum is there to prevent companies the size of Berkshire from engaging in large-scale home purchases? That's right. This was a big part of housing affordability last night. Hard to get laid in my mom's basement, but not impossible.
Yeah.
Justin, your thoughts?
I agree with you. The interview was not good. God bless Stephanie Ruhle. She was doing everything she possibly could to lay enough scaffolding there. Anybody worth their salt. The answer to that question is, Stephanie, we're not going to lose the Senate. We're going to win. Colin Allred's going to win in Texas. Whoever the person who's running against Rick Scott, I don't even know their name, is going to win in Florida. And we're going to keep the Senate. We're going to win the House, and we're going to be able to do everything that we want to do. That's the answer to that question. Kamala Harris hasn't quite done it. This is a big problem that I've had with her campaign ever since the rollout and their stinginess with interviews, because you've had a buildup. You know that she is not great at these, right? You know that the problem with 2019 is that people saw more of her and they liked her less. So what you need to do is, when the excitement is high, when it's Brat Summer, when it's fall out of a coconut tree, everybody's doing backflips, the money is insane, that's when you do the most softball interview with MSNBC, one where nobody's going to get mad that they're not asked. Just to go on Joy Reid the day after it happens and have her just say, Kamala, bravery. And then let her like smile and laugh, and everything will be fine. But it'll be high. You can then do a steady amount of those before you have to eventually get into stuff where you need to actually say anything. The problem with the Kamala Harris campaign right now is that things have gone well enough that they're worried about jinxing it. And I don't think that they have a good plan to push forth the issues that they need to do. And it doesn't help that they're running away from their record in a way that I don't necessarily think that they have to. Like, mix in a little bit of that 2019 stuff just to differentiate yourself, so you don't look exactly like Joe Biden or sound exactly like Joe Biden. You know, she did well in that debate, but I didn't grade her as high as a lot of other people, mostly because some of the stuff she said were literally word for word from Joe Biden's stump speech. She said the exact same words that Joe Biden said about Charlottesville. And it's like, look, if you're going to be new, be fresh, we're not going back. Like say something that is different.
We're not going back. Okay, before we wrap this up, Matt, real quick, your thoughts on another debate. Harris wanted to debate. Trump clearly didn't. Should they? Should he?
The only way Trump should debate Harris is to go on a network that is actually going to give him the opportunity to have a conversation with the American people, and not a 3-on-1 fight with the moderators who have come out and said afterwards, oh, well, we never intended to fact check Vice President Harris, which is just shameful on them. But you know, when you're in trouble for a baseball fan, if you go watch the Yankees and you're watching batting practice, and in batting practice, Aaron Judge and Juan Soto can't hit a pitch. Vice President Harris literally went on the easiest network with the easiest person, a Donald Trump hater, and she whiffed over and over again. And the problem for her campaign is she is a terrible candidate. It's the reason why she didn't even make it out of Iowa. So I am telling you now, in the Harris campaign,
correction, Matt, she actually never made it to Iowa. So
I think she got two.
They are inside the campaign saying, do we go back to the basement strategy and hide her, or do we have to put her out to do more interviews? Because that one was so bad. And I hope they debate again. I think Trump will mop the floor with her in a fair fight. It's very hard to go 3-on-1. I think it was a draw. I agree with Justin. On points, if I had to grade it on points, I would have given it to Harris. But in a draw, if you're fighting 3 people and you fight to a draw, then I give it to the guy fighting 3 people.
Sure. I get it. I think the CNN debate, the first one between Biden and Trump, it worked to Trump's advantage because Jake Tapper, Dana Bash made the decision not to fact check.
Well, and Joe Biden's brains leaked out of his nose on live television. They usually do well. You usually do well when that happens.
Your approach is like, it's up to the other candidate to hold each other accountable. Obviously, ABC did not do that. I think
I hate that, for the record. I hate live fact checking. I think that it's bad. Dedicate entire block.
I'm only fact checking one candidate. That they admitted.
Yeah. It just becomes basketball fouls at a certain point where if you tag one, now you have to tag the other one. It's just bad. I'm Bernard Shaw. Ask the most dark questions possible and let him go.
Bring back Bernie.
We got to roll on here real quick here. Scan the QR code to decide the final topic. Those of you fine folks, the millions of viewers we got watching at home right now, do you want to see these two dudes duke it out over the interview we were just talking about? More than likely, watch out, folks. I mean, this is pretty one-sided. The Eric Adams indictment. All right, time now for an ad read. We brought this to you on the show last week. If you're watching this broadcast and you thought, man, that guy, I would love for him to talk for 30 seconds about my company. Can I please? I've got shut up and take my money, JD. We are willing to do that. Scan the QR code. You can advertise with us here at the show. Did the number change, Taylor? Or are we still like 200?
No, yeah, starting at 200.
Starting at 200 bucks. You got 200 bucks, just burn a hole in your pocket.
Bare minimum.
You're like, man, what do we do here? We will read mostly almost anything you give us. But please give us your money here. Okay, time now for a fan favorite segment on the show. We've been doing it since the very start. It's time for pole dancing right now. Da-da-da. Okay, we're back. Okay, today we're going to take a look at the great state of Arizona. Arizona has 11 electoral votes. The state went for Biden in 2020, also went for Donald Trump over Secretary Clinton in 2016. And right now, according to the Real Clear Politics average, Trump has a narrow lead, pretty much within the margin of error. I mean, that's like jump ball territory. This is one and change right now in Arizona. Basically a jump ball in the Copper State, but the betting markets, here's what's interesting. Betting markets see this playing out a little bit differently. Our friends over at Polymarket, one of the most popular event contracts market sites in existence right now and surging in popularity this year, Polymarket odds give Trump a 63% chance of winning the state, according to users on the platform. Remember how this works. A yes bet on Trump in Arizona costs 63 cents a share as a purchase. If the bet hits, in other words, if Trump wins, the platform pays you out $1 per share. You can read those numbers the same as statistical odds, 63. Back to Justin and Matt. Matt, first to you. Your thoughts on Arizona, either polling and in general, when you look at polls like this or betting markets, do you put a lot of stock into it, or do you say, yeah, these things have been wrong before?
Well, I think the money markets, the betting markets, people really ought to do a better job of looking at those. When people bet with their money, they're literally putting their money where their mouth is. And they've been more right in the last couple of years, and certainly the polling. Look, right at this point, Harris has had, to Justin's point, she had a great 6 weeks when she started out. She had a good debate, and she is raising 3 times as much money as Donald Trump. If she's losing a state at this point, mark it down, she's going to lose it. She will lose Arizona.
Justin, what do you think? Arizona's in play. I mean, remember, Arizona was the big one. This was the big controversy. This was election night. I was there at the White House when this happened.
Yeah.
Trump press team walking out. I remember it was Blake Berman at Fox Business at the time. He did live shots right next to me, and they came out on election night. They're like, I'm paraphrasing here, like, what the fuck do you mean Fox News just called the state for Joe Biden? Like, this was a big deal. Justin, your thoughts here on Arizona? Is it in play, or are we going back to
No, I think that Trump is leading in Arizona. What we're finding out is that the electoral landscape looks a lot like it did before the switcheroo, where the Democrats are pretty well clinging to the idea that they can win the blue wall states of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Nevada looks more favorable to Harris than it was to Biden, but Arizona, look, it's a border state. You've really seen a lot of realignment, especially in those border states with Black and Latino voters. Arizona might be one of the biggest states, and Nevada, where the RFK endorsement actually could really move numbers, because RFK.
We almost got through a full show with an RFK reference. We had 11 minutes left, and you guys are like, fuck it. You know what? Off the top rope. No. Bobby
don't
Kennedy,
worry. I'll send you my demure nudes as opposed to RFK. But yeah, I mean, he had a huge RFK. In all seriousness, has pull with Latino voters, and much like his dad did, and those are going to play most heavily in the swing states in Nevada and Arizona. I think Trump is leading there. The bigger question is Nevada, and then ultimately it's whether or not Trump can pick off one of those blue wall states. From my point of view, the Harris campaign wins, not necessarily with Arizona or Nevada. It is the blue wall states. To me, it's Pennsylvania and Georgia. Harris as a candidate, the combination of never Trumpers and black votes in Atlanta, the Raphael Warnock coalition, the John Ossoff coalition, that's who you want to put together. If you can win Pennsylvania and Georgia, it's a wrap. Kamala Harris is the next president of the United States. Right now, she doesn't look great in Georgia. She's seeing polls go the wrong way. Pennsylvania is tight as a tick. But ultimately, I think it's not really revolutionary to say that Pennsylvania is going to be the tipping point state.
No, I mean, that's 19 electoral votes. That's the largest of these 6 or 7 kind of swing states that are up for grabs here. So appreciate that. Okay, guys, let's move on here because my overwhelming favorite, not exactly a jump ball here, Real Clear Politics polling average had this much closer. Which one was it going to be? Eric Adams' indictment or Harris on MSNBC? Of course it's got to be. I mean, this was like totally bonkers here in New York City. This is where I am. I'm also going to say, not a surprise. If you had friends who are reporters, have covered City Hall for a long time, there's been the whiff of potential indictment, respectfully, to the mayor and many around him for quite some time. I believe we have sound.
Yeah.
Is this from the presser today?
Today.
This is one of the more fucking... This is what happens when your advance team doesn't do what they're supposed to do, because you could have done this inside, out of the rain, with secure, where only reporters with press credentials could get in, but no... Man of the people, freshly indicted Eric Adams. Let's do it out there for the entire city to openly mock you while also it's raining. Here's the now indicted mayor of New York City.
This is not surprising to us at all. The actions that have unfolded over the last 10 months, the leaks, the commentary, the demonizing, this did not surprise us that we reached this day. And I ask New Yorkers to wait to hear our defense before making any judgments.
I mean, on a note of legal correctness, obviously, just because you've been indicted, no matter who you are, doesn't mean you're guilty. Foundational to our system of the judiciary is you are innocent until you are proven guilty. So I understand the argument to say, whether you're Trump or anyone else, hey, I've been indicted, so fucking what? I'm staying in office, nothing's been proven. That's foundational to our system. But Matt, come on. This looks fucking brutal. You got Democrats now. And by the way, this came a few hours after. The indictment was after Representative Ocasio-Cortez said he's got to resign. What do you make of this? And is this kind of problematic for other non-Eric Adams Democrats, Matt?
Well, it is interesting to me that the 3 Democrats that I could come up with that have been indicted, that are elected officials, have in one way, shape, or form upset the White House. We can go to Eric Adams on immigration, Henry Cuellar on immigration, and Bob Menendez on the Iran deal way back when under the Obama administration. Just throwing it out there. Just throwing it out there.
That's a little tinfoil hat-ish,
just think about it. But I do think...
What about Hunter Biden?
Hunter Biden, he should be indicted in a lot
Did what?
more.
Hunter Biden pissed off the Biden White House? Come on.
He should be indicted on a lot more than he's been indicted on. But on Eric Adams, the guy isn't going to last till the end of the year. It's, for me as a Republican, I'd like to see somebody come back in like Rudy did way back in the 90s to clean up the city. I grew up in New Jersey. Before Rudy came along, we couldn't go over into town if it was dark out because you just didn't feel safe and it was dirty and town was a mess. And after Rudy left, and Bloomberg actually did a good job too, the city was thriving. I think the city, as the great Jack Nicklaus said in Batman, needs a complete enema, and they need to have a new way of doing things in New York City. Give the Republicans a chance. Like Donald Trump said, what do you have to lose? Look at the mess that you guys are in. What do you have to lose? Give us a shot.
Well, so long as Donald Trump is at the top of any ticket, there will never be a Republican elected here in New York City. Let's not forget, Donald Trump lost Manhattan in the New York primary in 2016. His name is on every other damn building. He lost Manhattan in the primary to John Kasich, a man whose name New Yorkers could not even pronounce. New Yorkers hate Donald Trump through and through for the most part in the city, at least the liberal part of Manhattan. But, Jury, I mean, this... I'm kind of reminded of like the old Tammany Hall Democratic power machine. It's like obviously whether it's Chicago or New York, there's a long history of city corruption because city officials tend to be Democrats. They tend to be Democratic corruption scandals. How do you make this in terms of the party 40 days and change out from the election?
I haven't read the indictment cover to cover. I saw a little bit of it. I was kind of surprised that it wasn't more. He went to Turkey a lot. He got a lot of plane tickets bought for him. everybody that I've known that's gone back and forth to Turkey has a better hair restoration system than Adams has. So I think he got kind of shortchanged there.
That's where that's how
is that how you're growing it out?
Istanbul,
Isn't it funny that everybody famous now, like Jay-Z was like balding when he was making his best at work, and now he has gigantic dreadlocks? Like everybody famous is a full head of hair right now. God bless Turkey for their hair restoration. That being said, I don't know. Look, Eric Adams has had a corrupt reputation from his time in the police force. The idea that he is being brought up on these charges isn't shocking. I again was surprised more that it was not anything more overwhelming. You know, the nastiest thing that I saw filter its way through Twitter was actually Zach Grauman, who worked for Andrew Yang in running against Eric Adams in that race, pointing out that Eric Adams, one of his aides, was contacted by somebody in Turkey saying, hey, we can get you money from Turkey, but we're going to have to push it through an American. And the aide said, I don't think he'll go for it, until he went and talked to Adams, and Adams said, oh, hell yeah, I'll go for it. And they cashed the $100,000 check. But still, it's like, yeah, that doesn't look good. I would prefer that that's not the case. But we got Tim Walz taking pictures with Alex Soros, you know, in his penthouse, talking about what amazing things that they're going to do. And so it's like, look, how concerned are we with foreign-made money filtering its way into American politics? Really, I think it's something that often gets pointed out on the other side when nobody really cares about it, unless you get caught with gold bars in your New Jersey house.
Dude,
and your wife might have killed somebody.
William Jefferson, money in the freezer in Louisiana. Remember him?
Yeah.
You know, it's just like it's just a bad look for my two states. I'm from Jersey. I live in New York. We had a rough year for sure. Well, fellas, we're about out of time, but this is my favorite part of the show. And I gotta say, this was respectful. We found common ground. You guys were very cordial to one another, and that's what it's all about. Because the spirit of what we're here to do is because for everyone who tunes into regular political commentary and cable news, it's fights and it's screaming. So this was inspired by my favorite debate question from 2016 between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Justin and Matt, both candidates were asked, say something nice about the other person. And so, jury, I'm going to start with you. Say something nice about what happens. Let's say Matt's prediction is right. Donald Trump wins. Republicans clean slate, the other side of Pennsylvania Avenue. Something you could look forward to or find common ground with Republicans if this election goes that way.
If the election is, I think the best thing that I could say is that we are going to be officially at the end of this incredibly turbulent era of politics. Donald Trump will have expended his second term. The Democrats will be without their biggest boogeyman that they have raised money on and driven turnout for. I don't know if anyone's going to particularly learn a lot of lessons. I do know that the Democratic Party is going to, the internal turmoil of the Democratic Party is going to make the Hunger Games look like a dinner party if Donald Trump wins. And I do think that they are overdue for a realignment of where they're coming from. So I think that would probably be the biggest thing that I would look forward to, is that the chaos that enveloped the Republican Party in 2016 with Donald Trump storming in and really seizing control of the power structure is going to happen with the Democrats. And I'm very interested to see who shuffles out.
Matt, I got under a minute. Over to you. Harris wins. Democrats win across the bow. Come on, say something.
Well,
nice,
listen,
man.
Justin has a hell of a head of hair, for one. Two, if that were to happen, I hope that the Democrats actually take a page out of Trump's campaign book, which is to reach out to Republicans and actually start talking to them about trying to bring an economic agenda that can bring the country back together for America, not for international businesses and friends and family that are doing business internationally.
Fair enough. All right. It's close enough to common grounds. We're going to take it. My special thanks to both guests. We kept you the full hour because you guys were so awesome. That's Justin, Robert Young, and Matt Keelen. My special thanks to both of you guys. Go Giants!
Let's go Giants!
Because now it's time to watch Thursday Night Football. Thank you, guys. Thank you at home for taking the time to watch us. We'll see you again next Thursday live from Brooklyn, New York. For Common Threads. See you then.